Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Library Link NJ skill sharing conversation on managing a library of things. My name is Darby Malvey. I am Programming and Outreach Coordinator for Library Link NJ, and I am thrilled that today we're able to host this discussion moderated by Matt Latham, Library Director, and Jeff Hoffman, PR Marketing and Special Project Coordinator for the Ramsey Public Library. Ramsey Public Library has a phenomenal library of things. Matt and Jeff have a wealth of information, experience, knowledge, and advice to share with us today during our conversation. And we hope that you all will also jump in with questions, comments, and advice of your own. So without further ado, let's get started.
Jeff, do you want to give any other quick intro before we dive in?
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm Jeff. As Darby had introduced, the special projects coordinator part of my job is pretty much then managing the Library of Things collection. Matt had brought the Library of Things pretty much into existence at our library. We started off with a tech lending program before it became known as the Library of Things, which was pretty much like we had a couple of like classic video game systems, like the NES, SNES. There might have been like, I think the Spheros were in there, Matt, like to begin with too.
Map circuits for sure.
Yeah, there was a couple like, really cool, a lot of like almost like STEM electronics that we had started off with tech lending. And it was in a location kind of like shoved in a corner in our children's room. And it was, it was a interesting thing to start off with, but Matt had then come to me about like 2 years ago. I think it was in the summer of 2020 when we were reopening then, with the idea to kind of then expand that collection into then the Library of Things, which is at this point, I want to say at least over 100 unique items. Then once it's broken down, there's like oftentimes either duplicates of each item if it warrants it. So it really has grown, and it continues to grow too. Mostly, primarily through either suggestions we see from our community that they specifically need, or even then, sometimes, as Matt was saying, we'll see, a couple of nearby libraries that they have something that we're like, wow, okay, that's really interesting. It's really doing well, that we want to add into our own collection as well too. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys then. We made a poster session for NJLA about a year ago then. For NJLA, it was 2021, I guess.
Yep, the virtual one. Mm-hmm.
And it was really exciting at that time too. It was funny, even when I was looking over it, from the point that we made this poster session, there's been a lot of other additions to it, other stuff we've learned as well. So we'll have that on in the background, and then we'll kind of go along a couple of talking points, and then just pretty much open up to any questions for anyone who's really interested in starting up in a Library of Things or has one going and wants to get a couple of clarifications with how we manage stuff then. So let me share my screen here with you guys here.
And while Jeff's doing that, I'll just jump in and say, if you're interested in our circulation like numbers, so we have a population of a little bit over 14,000. Since we've expanded it last year, I think we had about 760 for circulation number for last year, and we're at basically that now already. So we've seen like double-digit growth for the circulation of this collection each year as it's gone by. And you can see here, there's lots of information here. I thought we'd do a couple of quick summary things, and then we'll open up, because this is obviously we want this to be discussion. But some things we've kind of learned along the way. So why would you want to do the Library of Things at all, right? I think there's three main points for us, and it will vary for your home community and your home library. I think one of the main things would be access to tools and things that may not be accessible for people who wouldn't be able to access it otherwise. For whatever barrier there might be to access, that is a main goal for that. Other things that we've seen have been helpful for people. Items that are needed occasionally by people, but not enough to purchase it. So like tools that you may use, like a air quality tester. You may not want to purchase that for your home, but you may need it once in a while to do that. And finally, there is another portion where some people will want things for like testing things out before they want to purchase themselves, right? So there's several different things, and there's many more reasons, of course, than that. I think that first one, access to tools that are not accessible, that's the main point, really. Some other quick thoughts in terms of processing, right? So processing your items, processing and circulation. I think one of a thing that a lot of people get worried about is how we're going to actually check these items back in at the desk, right? There might be lots of parts or other things like that. We've adopted a strategy where I've done this at 2 different libraries now, Leonia and Ramsey. The item gets brought back to the library, it gets checked in, but then the pieces get checked later. So we put it in a bin for another designated staff member to actually go through and check the pieces later. That's accompanied with a policy that everyone who borrows needs to sign. So like a waiver form that lets them know, basically also a hold harmless agreement, as well as replacement costs and things like that. That being said, we've never actually had to charge anyone to replace any of our items completely. There have been plenty of times when people have lost pieces. We've adopted a strategy of having extra pieces available, right? We've bought extra pieces or bought an extra kit if possible. Or if we have a lot of board games too, we've actually gotten donations or gone to thrift stores and gotten other copies of that game that are maybe you can pilfer pieces from, things like that. So that's a couple.
Oh no, did we lose Matt?
All right, let's see if Matt, maybe it's buffering, but I'll pick up where he left off for the meantime right now. So as Matt was saying, yeah, adding on pieces and whatnot. And it's funny too, the board games, I know that certainly was kind of an intimidating part for us to add in. When we had started off our collection, we kept it very then kind of like, what we could manage definitely, almost as test items. Items that we knew A, would be popular, and B, wouldn't be then too much of a kind of like a conundrum to try to figure out. So a lot of those were either, again, those tech lending kits, sports equipment, kind of kept to those 2 genres. Eventually, then once we kind of built up our collection and did a little bit of research too, is when we decided to add in board games. And with that collection, then it's funny, even if it's not a piece that necessarily goes to that board game, we'll still add it in with that, understanding that, hey, if you're playing with a chess piece or a pawn in Monopoly, it might be an interesting kind of variation to that too. And that's definitely then one of those things that this collection, I think, that's really important to this collection above all, is just kind of adapting with just understanding that it is unique. And it does kind of have to require different ways of approaching it than even then, like any other collection in the library. As Matt was saying, we're in a position where we've been very fortunate where, we have never had to really replace an item full outright. And even when we had to replace items, oftentimes, we try to be as understanding as possible for our patrons. There's been a couple of, like, for instance, either missing HDMI cables. When it's manageable stuff like that, of course, right, things happen where items like that get easily lost. We don't typically want to have to either charge, which some libraries do, and again, it depends on the community, but charge like full replacement costs for an item if a small piece is either missing that could easily be replaced. And again, it all depends really on the community and where your library is standing, both with funding and whatnot. So there's a lot of elements that go into that. So we have been fortunate where oftentimes with a lot of if there's any issue with either replacement pieces and whatnot, we can kind of figure something out on the fly. And oftentimes then it really has benefited both the trust in our collection, where people feel comfortable checking out these items because, if you see, for instance, that let's say like we have our movie projector kit, I think for some patrons, it may be a little bit kind of intimidating to check that out if you knew that if you, lost the remote, that you would then have to pay for the full, like, $300 movie projector kit. So we certainly want to try to, again, from where we're able to stand and our position of how fortunate we've been, I think it's really gone a long way in helping us kind of build that connection with our community, letting them know, hey, feel comfortable checking these out. We'll work with you if something does happen then. So that really is a big part of it. So certainly that, yeah. As Matt was saying too, policy and forms, we adapted a policy or a form that patrons have to sign. One of the learning things that occurs that we've kind of come across is that we used to have a patron sign that form every single time they check something out. which became at a certain point, people were like, I've checked out a library of things item like, 20 times, like, why do I have to sign this again? So, again, after working that through, we were able then to kind of create one overarching form that we now keep on file. And this way, then we have kind of we know, okay, they've signed it, they've agreed to it. As I was talking with Matt when preparing for this presentation, really the idea for us for the form is kind of primarily for items that we added later on. So, the policy and form is nice to have for like backyard games and whatnot, but I think it really became important when we started doing items that were a little bit more potentially concerning for if there was something that would happen. So we, for instance, we lend out a power adapter, or we lend out a knife sharpener. So for items like that, we want to make sure that, liability and whatnot is all taken care of, and there's no concern on our hands. Then, the patron knows that, all of the policy and the agreement in getting this item. So for certain items, then it certainly makes more sense. But it's a good thing to have overarching, because even if, let's say, you're going to start off with a collection that's more, again, I guess like user friendly, like, sports equipment and whatnot, you may build up into then having those larger items that there may be a concern eventually down the road. So it's a good thing to have then. And again, most patrons understand completely, and also too, we offer getting them a copy of that form in case if they're interested in reading it over again later. And all that information is on our website as well too, if they want to reference it. The lending periods that we have, most items are 2 weeks. There's only a couple exceptions where they're 1 week. And again, too, throwing back to a point of being kind of understanding this is a collection that requires a lot of like changing and adapting to. We had our power washer, our pressure washer, we had it linked in January, and it sat there for, I don't know, a couple months, because of course, right, that makes sense that, people are going to be pressure washing their house, in the middle of February. But so we had that initially at 2 weeks, and then the summer came around, and as soon as it was that hint of warm weather, all of a sudden the reservations for it just filled up, and we had to then adapt to that situation. Okay, it's a popular item, we only have one, and we changed that lending period then to 1 week. This way, then it could accommodate more people, and right now even still the list is like 4 people long. That are waiting into September then. So it definitely comes with that idea that, anything that really, nothing's really set in stone, I guess, for the library of things, in terms of policy and whatnot go, because a lot of those items might all of a sudden kind of throw a wrench into what you've already understood, and you kind of have to adapt with that then. Let's see, yeah, we've had, it's kind of always been, as another point, library of things has really been great for public relations, kind of for like branding your library. One of our main goals once we've gotten the Library of Things collection is really we want to kind of attach that to an understanding of libraries in general. Oftentimes whenever we go out to like like we had our summer kickoff party, or we had then a new resident mixer, we'll always try to bring something with us that oftentimes, whether it matches in that event, like our summer kickoff party, we brought a bubble machine. That's a big hit. For the new resident mixer, we had a couple of backyard games that they could play. And it's really exciting to see, one of my favorite things that I've ever really seen when working with this collection is, when you're talking about the collection, you're like, yeah, especially to new residents or people who haven't been to the library in quite a while. And you're like, yeah, our library, we've got like a pressure washer, and we've got tools, and we've got backyard games. And just to see their face, I've had a couple of times where like, it's pretty much like their mouth just drops open because they can't believe that the library is offering these types of items. And it's really exciting then to see too, because, that's really what our whole goal is with this, is to kind of both offer these items to our community, but also use it as almost like a rebranding tool for the library as well, to let people know, yeah, the library that you have in your mind, that's from 30, 40 years ago, a lot has changed. And, we're offering new collections, a lot of new tech stuff too. So it's really a wonderful tool then to use for public relations. What we've tried to do on our end then is for like social media, we usually do like a post a week then about, hey, here's another item in the Library of Things collection that maybe you didn't know about. And, it gets a lot of good response too. Oftentimes we see people come in and like, oh yeah, I had no idea then that you were offering that. So it's really a fantastic point for that too.
Jump in there.
Half of the job is, hey, Matt.
Hi. Well, I know this is supposed to be a conversation as well, so we have a couple of questions that have come in a little bit. So let me, if we're good, maybe we'll switch to that. And just the last thing I'll note is that it's a great fundraising tool. It's very popular. So if you're looking to solicit funds for something, this is a good thing to do. And just for fun, our top lending items are hotspots, backyard movie kits, backyard games, Sphero Robotics, our electric knife sharpener, and our NES Classic are basically our top circing items. So I see that there's a number of questions though, so let me go back and see what we have here. Sorry, my screen is jumping around a little bit.
One of the first ones is from Hoboken Cirque. Any products you would recommend not lending? It was funny. Yeah, Matt and I were talking about this last week. We were trying to find the least popular items that lended. Typically, like we have like a floppy disk drive. I think it might have, circed out once. It was one of those things that, I guess it's good to have in case if someone really needs it, but it might be one of those like really niche items that no one really would ever really use anymore now. We recently added a travel power adapter, which allows you then to use different plug formats. So in case you're traveling to like European countries or, it's something that has like beyond than the 3-prong plug, you can kind of adapt that. I don't know if it's a fact that maybe a lot of people haven't been thinking of our library as a place to go before they travel. That one may have to sit for a little while just to kind of see again if it kind of gains some ground then with advertising for it. Matt, is there any other ones that come to mind then?
The other thing I would mention is, and this is something I think that might come up for a lot of people, is donations. So when we launched the program, a lot of our patrons thought do we want to donate items to us? And I think just think of it in similar to like book donations or anything else. It's something that can be helpful, but is also potentially something to be weary of. So we did add some board games that were donations, but they didn't look brand new, and some of them were older and whatever. They were fine, but I think the look of them may have deterred people from borrowing them. So those are some of the lowest circling ones. And I think that the fact that, looks like an old book, looks like an old board game, I think the same kind of idea behind that is true. Let's see. The next question was, we do not have space and house our collection on site and are planning on a colorful binder of things to patrons to browse, along with pictures and website catalog. Have other libraries used this technique successfully? I can say that my hometown library in Denville does do this, and it looks pretty cool. They've got a very small space. It's like a little corner where they have all their materials, and they do have a binder, which I think is actually interesting because they give all the description of the material as well, like what the item is, details about the lending period, all that kind of stuff. And it's all categorized. Of course it is, because, we're librarians, so we categorize things. And I think that it does work for people. So I've seen it work well. Has anyone else used that model or a different way of presenting that when they don't have physical space?
And I want to jump in and say you all can feel free to unmute at any time if you have, comments or you want to jump into the conversation, because this is a discussion. So feel free to chime in.
And looks like a lot of people lend hotspots. I think that one a lot of libraries have done for a number of years now. But it's still super popular. And, let's face it, it's like one of the more basic things that you can offer that can be needed by patrons, internet access. So if you're able to offer that, you can get that through TechSoup is one option, which is, if anyone doesn't know TechSoup, it offers products to libraries, educational institutions, other nonprofits at a discount. So they do have a hotspot program. T-Mobile is another one that I'm aware of. I've used both of them. They both have ups and downs. I think T-Mobile's tends to be a little bit pricier. So it's kind of a decision as to what you want to do, but both of those are options available for hotspots. I don't know.
How do you recommend developing your collection? Do you just brainstorm among staff, send out surveys to patrons? It's a great question. When we had started off our collection, it was, again, items that we had seen either success with or were relatively like kind of safe items that we knew were going to get good serve. But then once the collection kind of started to grow, what I often try to do then is whenever I see that someone's checking it out, kind of just ask them, is there anything that you're looking for? Is there anything that, you would like to see in the collection? And oftentimes, we'll get great recommendations. Sometimes you get recommendations that you can't really use. Someone had recommended a rock polisher. So it comes with kind of like an understanding of how your collection works, what you can, certainly afford or, store. But it's a great question. And yeah, I oftentimes just try to put it out to the community to see what they are looking from us then.
Some other thoughts quick there too. We have a form on our website that people can make recommendations to us for. Also, in putting this together, I looked at other places like party supply stores or tool lending places. I saw Sussex County Libraries on there. I think it's Sussex County Tool Rental. I borrowed a lot of ideas from, so go and take a look there. The Sparta Library had done a number of things. I had presented with them a few years ago. They offer I think, hot dog rolling machines, like bouncy castles, all kinds of stuff. And we have a special guest here. Hi. And now we're going to go see Mom again.
No. We got to see. We need another preview.
Preview?
Not enough. Hi. Hi, sweetheart.
2-year-old Alora.
Beautiful.
And we're having some low
Yeah.
Yes. Bye-bye. Anyway, looking at all those different places, I think gives you, just throw it way out there in terms of brainstorming, and then try to think of your local community. Like, what are the general needs that might be in your community, and try to match those together. And then there are some things that are just generally appealing, like backyard games or hotspots, those kind of home tools are all interesting things.
I want to go back really quickly. I know we've gotten a lot of good questions, and we skipped over a question from Christine earlier, which was, that's okay. Do you or have you considered asking patrons for a deposit on items?
I think we did consider that at Leonia. I'm of the mindset that I like to try to have as little barriers as possible for library service. We are a fine-free library as well. So my perspective as a librarian is to reduce barriers to access. I'm not sure for a deposit. Again, we've never actually had to replace an item, like a full item, other than it being a wear and tear situation. So that is something that you should be aware of, that, we just had to replace a cornhole game. And it wasn't because anyone broke it. It's because it got checked out 50 times. And eventually it just wear and tear like a book. I don't know if you'd get a ton of benefit from putting that on there. I would only see it as a potential barrier, but it may be different for the community. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts there. But and
I'm wondering if Jessica's question, I think, is in relation to that, which said, what about with high ticket items like tablets and iPads?
And again, I've done it in 2 different communities now, Leonia and Ramsey. They are somewhat similar. So, I can't say that it's a giant swath example, but we've not had a situation where we've had to worry too much. We do make the waiver is the thing that we have them do, that you sign this and you will be responsible for that, for the replacement fee. And I kind of, in the end, also just sort of accepted the idea and got my board to accept the idea that we may lose some money here and there. Like, it's just part of the game. But if you compare that to how much our patrons are getting, and I think interesting, I don't think we've turned on this feature yet. And I saw this was another question, using Lending Key. We do use Lending Key to loan our items, which is Museum Key if you use it for museum passes too. They have a feature in their program that can, hi again, that can calculate how much your patrons are saving. Because when you put in how much each item costs, you can tabulate how much your patrons are saving, and maybe use that to present to your board if they're worried about costs. That might be a roundabout answer. Sorry about that. We'll close that door. So I lost where we were on the question. Sorry about that.
I'm looking at, let's see, Robin's question, which I think kind of circles back to what Matt was just saying. Anything we should be aware of regarding maintenance and fixing certain equipment, especially if the staff has little interest or knowledge with certain equipment? That's a great question. About a year ago, I was really determined to try to be like the resident handyman for a lot of the items. Again, I think, if a piece can be fixed with relatively little time and little research, like just today, I just reattached a zipper on one of our badminton kits, and it took like 5 minutes. So stuff like minor repairs like that, I definitely would say, of course, it's worth it. But there are certain things then, that were way over my head. Like we had an Atari system that for whatever reason, the circuit board wasn't working, or one of the controllers wasn't working. So I was trying to take a look at, maybe, could we solder the wires, or, try to fix that, or order a replacement wire. And at the end of the day too, oftentimes you're just really, it's not worth the time to put into it. If then the replacement, for instance, for an item like that would be, let's say, $50 or $60. So it definitely depends on the item it is, and the type of piece that needs repairing there.
Some of the items too, like snap circuits and some of the other STEM stuff, they will send you pieces for free if you request them. So I actually did receive a bunch of snap circuit pieces that were replacements for free when I just asked them for them. So that's an opportunity possibly. Let's see, what do we have next? Advertise, let's see, Martha just said this yet. They advertise on their website, handouts, welcoming brochure. I think that is really great. This is, again, it's a great PR option, something you can, for new residents on your website, brochure, bring it to every PR event that you have, take it to the schools. It's something that will catch eyes and bring people into the library who may not have thought of the library as a place for them anymore.
Natalie, I see your question with how do you promote then in your community for library things? Do you find discovery to be the best promotion? Or you advertise in your community in some way? Yeah, I mean, social media is a big part of it, where we make posts about then the collection. We're in the process of creating a brochure that's specific just for the library of things. So it certainly is our general brochure that, it mentions it as a section, but because it's grown so much then, it's oftentimes tough when you're doing outreach and you're like, oh, we've got like a bubble machine and we've got like a pressure washer, and you can't list everything. Sometimes there may be a specific item that someone's really, really interested in that you forgot to mention. So having handouts, that's certainly helpful. And even just then location in our library has been super helpful. When we started off then the library of things, again, as I said, the tech lending was in the children's room in a corner. Once we branded it as a library of things, it was in the center of our library, but wasn't really organized. It was just kind of on tables. And Matt was able then to work with then our friends group and kind of shift our book sale section actually to another location to use some really prime real estate in our library to house this collection. So again, elements like that really help where once people walk right through the door, they can't really miss it. And that's a huge, that goes a really, really long way then. So it's a really great question.
One quick other thought on that, excuse me, would just be local community groups. So like we have a button machine that we loan out, and groups like the Girl Scouts love borrowing it. So like word of mouth and promoting those things directly to groups that you may be working with your library already connected to, that is a great way to spread information. And really word of mouth is how so much of all of our stuff gets promoted, but I think especially the Library of Things. Let's see, what do we have next?
So Jessica, you're saying about high ticket items like tablets and iPads. Is that in reference then to the earlier question about like donations, or is it just like how we lend them? Because we were able to get, and I'm blanking on the name, Matt, with the group or the program that we got our iPads through.
I think a lot of libraries know that, probably NJ Health Connect.
Yes.
Everyone has a lot of those.
Yeah, it's that one. We're trying to build up a policy around it, and I'm just like, I guess, shopping around any libraries I could find and see what would work for our patrons and what we could bring to our board as like at least like a draft to what we imagine the policy would be.
Well, certainly we can share it here, but it's on our website, our policy, if you're interested. Right on our website, our Library of Things link. we do have our full policy listed there, which also includes our waiver, which went through an attorney review as well. So both of those things, and you'll see different libraries do different things. If you do have access to an attorney, especially one with library experience, it's not a bad idea to have them look over your policy, and maybe also looking for insurance as well. In Bergen County, we have a joint insurance fund that I did work with them to have them review our policy and waiver, and they gave the stamp of approval as well. So looking for, check with their attorney if possible, and with your insurance to make sure that they are on board with the wording that you're using. And feel free to borrow anything from ours. We borrowed it from several other libraries.
Matt, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
When you all were talking in the beginning about having patrons sign off, when they borrow things, I was thinking, they're signing off saying, yes, I promise to return this, whatever. But are you saying you also have like a liability waiver? So if I borrow a knife sharpener and then I end up in the emergency room sharpening my knife, basically you have a waiver that says the library is not liable. Is that?
Yes, and it's all in one form. And it's like, right. We hand them our policy, and they have this form that includes both of those things, that they were promised to return it, that there's a fee involved. Now, we did create it as like a generalized thing, like Jeff was saying, so that we wouldn't have to have them sign every time. So it basically refers back to whatever it says. Doesn't list the individual cost for each item. It says whatever the library has listed, and you agree to that. And then there's also the waiver part too. Now, caveat, of course, is that do waivers work like ironclad? They do not. So like, it's just something that no waiver is going to work perfectly. We have waivers for art gallery, we have waivers for other things. But it's something I think is probably going to be recommended by your attorney and your insurance company almost for sure. Let's see. I think there's a lending system that takes a credit card in case of loss. I believe Roxbury uses it. That would be Rodwa. She's fantastic, and I'm not sure what they use. If anyone knows a lending program that also allows credit card acceptance, put it in the chat for sure. I see Sherry says they have at their library a jigsaw puzzles that they've added. They were all donated. We do not count the pieces and do not charge for missing pieces. They're very popular. So I think that's a really cool model. And Jeff and I just this last week started a new thing where and this is something we did at Leonia. I did at Leonia as well. We had a lot of donated board games and puzzles and things. Some of them we didn't think were appropriate for our library of things. They were older or whatever. We just started a shelf in the building that has not labeled, nothing's set in stone. You can just take anything you want, play with it around the library, play the game, build this puzzle, and put it back at your leisure. No one checks anything. Nobody worries about anything. If something gets lost or missing or broken, we don't worry about it. So I think that was very popular at Leonia, and it went in combination with our library of things there. So I think that's another model that you can explore as well.
And just to jump off of Matt's point too, with board games that are in our library of things, our approach has always kind of been just make it as easy as possible to check in and to check for both your staff and then the patron as well. We're not counting then each individual a piece of like money in Monopoly, or even if it's then like the house is in like Catan. Like we try to just keep it like a bag of this, and if it looks relatively filled, that's good enough for us then. So again, so long as it's not like a game breaking piece that's missing, we try to be as make the lending of it as simple as possible then. Let's see, with Natalie, hotspots and Chromebooks can be deactivated. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that we've been very fortunate. Again, we haven't had really a problem with patrons returning things like really overdue. With the lending key system, we have a couple of ways that we can get in contact with them with either email or phone. But that is an interesting thing, I guess, to consider then, certainly.
What we do with the lending system, though, is we do build in cushion of days between when the item becomes available and the due date, so that if someone is like a day or two late, it's not going to impact the next person. But we have had occasions where we've had to call patrons to try to get them to return items. So it's a a thing that happens. We don't have a perfect solution, but in general, it's worked well with a couple of caveats. We've had to make some calls and things like that. Regarding the tablets, do you loan them throughout the system or only to your patrons? So we actually allow our library of things to go out. So we're part of Buckles, so 77 libraries. We actually allow anything in our library of things to go out to any other library. The caveats being that it can't go through interlibrary loan. They have to pick it up at our library. They have to drop it off at our library. And we don't really actively advertise it outside of town. The reason we don't really encourage it because we don't want someone coming from wherever all the time, but we're very close to a lot of bordering towns that use our library as their primary library rather than their hometown library. And so we thought that it would be good to be able to do that. We also did have a period where we had it limited, saw that the demand was and our supply worked enough so that we could offer it outside of our library. So that if you may try to do a test period and see, do I have enough supply? Will it work to be able to offer it beyond our library? If so, maybe you could try it in baby steps along that way, which is kind of what we did. And it seems to work pretty well now. In fact, Jeff also was working at Ridgewood Library and had Ridgewood patrons coming to our library to borrow things.
Yeah. And, it's funny enough too, because, also part of that decision, we're trying to have that collection as open as possible to our community, and our community does include then out of town residents as well. What we've seen a couple of times, some neighboring libraries, they have where either their entire collection or items in their collection are limited to in-town residents. And that then ends up where if we have that item, they'll come to us specifically too. So we want to try to be as accommodating to people who are interested in these items. Again, as Matt said, our goal at the Ramsey Library is just to try to remove barriers. So having that in place would kind of, I think, almost go a little bit against our mission statement then. So, and again, we're able to, accommodate that, and we're very fortunate with that. But yeah, it's a great thing to have then. I see Sherry is mentioning Seed Library, which is definitely something that I have been so interested in. All amount of research I've ever done, it just is fascinating. I think that's definitely a next step for our library of things eventually. Matt had some shelving units that looked kind of perfect for it that maybe we might add eventually. And it definitely is, we don't have any experience with seed libraries here at the Ramsey Library, but it definitely, I think, would fit well in our library of things then. So yeah.
And over the last few years, I've seen a number of libraries. I know Cherry Hill's done it for a number of years now. Leonia, since I left, so I can't take credit for that one, but I will. I'll just take credit for it. They made a really cool one. Sherry's Library has one. So it's popping up a lot. So there are different models for doing it. So, take a look at one of those libraries and, contact them. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to give you information on how they started it. Let's see. Limiting items to just your library. I think we did that one. Oh, my screen switched on me here. So let me,
Sorry, I should have done a little bit earlier. I know all that block of text was really inviting them to try to read through, which, so let's see. We are on then.
Clearing out data between patron use. So
yes.
We've only been doing the tablets for a little while. They do, NJ Health Connect, if everyone has, or a lot of have those, they have a lot of preset things. So I think one of the things is really looking at the different apps and setting it up to really automatically clear data from as many apps and browsers and other things as you can before you actually start lending it. The same is true with settings and all of those kinds of things. But in the end, we do have it so that once it gets checked in, it goes to the person who is coordinating our collection, which is Jeff or myself sometimes, to do one last quick look at the different programs to make sure data is cleared. It's not the most efficient system, and maybe someone else has a better system than that. So feel free to offer that up for sure. That's how we do it. Health Connect iPad, we do a replacement fee, but we will also look at each case individually depending on the problem and the replacement of age and use. I think that's a great idea. That's kind of how we do it. Again, we've never had to charge anybody full replacement price. We try to work with anyone, but if someone were to throw it off a cliff and like to come to my library, I threw your item off a cliff. Ha ha ha. Well, then I would charge them. But luckily, people seem to feel like the Library of Things is just such a special collection or something, like they take better care of the items, it seems. Now, I'm knocking on wood. We've had plenty of lost pieces and wear and tear damage and things like that. And again, the way we've tried to do it is to have backup pieces, replacement pieces where possible. Some companies will send you replacement pieces. If you have a 3D printer and there are some things that are printable like plastic pieces, you could do it that way too. I've seen that happen. And then we just have this kind of built in that we may need to spend money to replace items. It's just part of the game, unfortunately. But it is a really popular thing for local community groups to donate to. So you may be able to find funding for it. Let's see.
Jessica, that's a great question. If someone happens to jailbreak the device, do you count it as damage since it voids the warranty? Fortunately, we have not had to deal with that quite yet. I think it's a fantastic question that I would imagine off the top of my head would probably be yes, because again, it's in direct kind of violation of what the item was intended for, and or it's no longer, we wouldn't be able to do too much with it then. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on it, but
I think actually that's something maybe we could put into our policy. Specific to that, but that might be a policy thing to like, hey, this counts as damage, because like Jeff's saying, it really, once you've jailbroken the item, like it's broken, you can't really use it very much. So I think we would count that as a replacement. Circing cake pans and other cooking supplies. So I know Glenrock does this. We don't have cake pans yet, but we're looking to do an ice cream maker soon. It's really heavy. So it's really, hard we're figuring out how to loan it. I think we have like a luggage type thing that we're going to use so that people can wheel it out of the building. But the cleaning part is a factor. From what I know of Glenrock and their experience, they've been doing cake pans for years. They basically make it implicit in their policy, like it must be returned in the condition that you received it, and like cleaning instructions, that kind of thing. And for the most part, people have abided by that. I think it's, again, not having the experience doing it, it feels like one of those situations where you may have to accept that there's going to be a time here or there where you're going to have to clean items, or maybe an item does get damaged and you may end up with like a replacement cost or something. Does anyone else have cake pan experience? Lending cake pans. It's a cool thing.
Robin, I don't know if you're able to unmute or if you want to share. I know you've mentioned in the chat that you have experience with the cake pan lending. You can feel free to.
Hi, yeah, we did at Oradell, like Jessica mentioned, and not everything goes out all the time, but they were acquired very inexpensively. A staff member just had a lot of fun sort of going around to yard sales, and most people would be like, oh, take them all for $1. And then once you start, people donate. And of course we had some just from youth services, like frogs from a Harry Potter event years ago. So yeah, in terms of cleaning, I don't remember any sort of real issues. I didn't deal with that, however, but it just, I think I just typed at the brownie pan that makes them where they're all crust. I could never seem to get hold of that one when I wanted it for my personal use. It was always checked out. But yeah, it wasn't an issue. At least the person that ran it never had any sort of problem. Nobody else felt burdened about it. Nobody complained about it whatsoever. So it was a good thing to add. And also I worked at Glenrock too, and it was pretty easygoing as well there.
Wow, we found the person. That's awesome. Thank you.
Then when we start lending then cake pans, we're probably going to reach out to you and be like, yeah, we need some advice then. So thank you.
And on cleaning, we're starting to do like outdoor tools. So we're looking at like a mulcher and like, kind of other outdoor stuff. We have the power wash already, steam cleaners and stuff. And I'm thinking what we're going to end up having to do is like, when it gets checked in, it's part of the routine of like a quick wipe down or something, sanitizing. But again, written into the lending policy, which we'll probably have to amend, about cleaning and, bringing the items back as you found. And maybe, there could be a charge as part of that. If it's not clean, there's a $5 charge or something like that, cleaning charge. Again, I hate to add barriers, and I don't like to do that, but maybe that could be a solution if you end up running into like your items are constantly coming back dirty or something like that. And Sussex County does cake pans too. My parents live there. I will have to borrow some cake pans with their library card. Let's see.
So I'm seeing a question from Brendan a little bit all the way down. Does anyone allow children to check out items like these out, such as board games, video games, puzzles? Recently had an issue with a parent upset. Okay, yeah. So we do actually, it's a great question. On our policy, the form they have to sign, if a child is checking it out, they have to have in their parent's signature then. So that verifies then that the parent knows then, or the parent or guardian knows that they are checking out this item. Again, we haven't thankfully had too many issues then with any parent or guardian who's upset with any of the items they checked out, but that was built into the policy and with the form to try to, I guess, prevent then any misunderstandings happening then with those items. And oftentimes too, it's the items that they are checking out are like board games just to begin with. So there's never been a concern really with the type of item they're checking out, but it's a great question, and it is something that I guess could be built into then a policy if you're interested in that.
Yeah, it is a good question. I think probably more of a question for like older teens who may want to borrow things and like you don't want to have their parents there. Our library, we tend to not run into that situation very often, but that may be something where you may want to create a different structure for older teens or something that may allow them access without having to have a parent there for any number of reasons, right? So I could see that that's a barrier. So that might be something we work on, Let's see. Oh, someone used a small card catalog and painted it with fruit, flowers, vegetables, seed companies that are glad to donate. That's a pretty cool way of doing that kind of lending. I would have just taken the card catalog home. But, that's okay. I'm kidding. But I would take it home. What's next here? Anyone interested in seed libraries might check out the Bergen County Master Gardeners. There's a great resource in the chat. Thank you for that. I know there's a farm in Orange County, New York that has worked with Leonia who donates seeds. So sometimes farms will donate seeds or different groups so you may be able to find places that will donate or give you a discount or come up with something, you promote their farm and they donate the seeds sponsored by something like that. So we don't have that personal experience, but thanks for putting that in the chat. There's a lot of libraries who are doing some really cool stuff with seed lending libraries. Looks like someone else uses software, MyTurn. I don't have experience with that. I'm not sure if they like that software, Mary Fran. We've had a pretty good experience, I think, with Lending Key. It's similar. It's the same software as Museum Lending. So because it's based upon checking things out and reserving things by date, by nature that comes up with all kinds of different problems that you may need to work on. Again, the cushion period after and before the due date and the lending period. There's a lot of little tweaks, lending periods, and then putting in what days your library is open and making sure that holidays are listed as things that are not available for lending. I learned that one the hard way. So, I think there's a couple of different softwares out there. But I think that if it's based upon picking your day, you're going to have those same challenges no matter what the software is.
Ken, I see your question. How do you keep your signed policy forms? We want to do it via Google Forms and then maybe add a note on the patron's record. It's a great question too. We do it pretty much the most simple way. We just have a binder that's behind our front desk that's alphabetized. It splits the alphabet into 3 different sections, and then just from there we just put the forms in. It is at this point we have to get a bigger binder, which is always good. That's good to see. That there's that many people who have signed off on the form, but an electronic version is definitely interesting. And I think Matt and I had discussed a while back about possibly even then, having built into the lending key if possible, saying that, you click off a button that says, you agreed and then to the policy, or, you virtually, sign the waiver then. But it hasn't been anything that we kind of really, I don't know whether it's just the capabilities of lending key, or we haven't really looked into it further. So if you do go with Google Forms, let us know how that kind of works, because that's an interesting idea then.
Just to follow up on that, I think one factor that stopped us from doing that is actually the attorney for the town. And I think that's that particular attorney's preference to have a physical signed form. We're in the process of, getting another attorney. So I think that one partially came because of the attorney we were using, which was the town's attorney, who did not have a lot of library experience, because we're in between attorneys at the moment for the library. So that's just a note for why part of the reason why that's in place. But I would love to do it virtual sign. That would make it much easier to do. Put a note on the patron's record. So interesting with Museum, again, the software we're using, we talked about the signing portion, but it does put the items checked out on their account, but you have to be careful. So we use like LibCal. Well, no, I'm sorry, not LibCal. We have, what do we have, Jeff? Leap, thank you.
Yeah. It's the same thing, it's close.
My brain, I promise. It doesn't go the other way. So if your staff accidentally checks it out on Leap, it will not then register in the Library of Things catalog, so it will still show as available. So again, we learned that one the hard way.
Yes.
There's not a lot of communication between that software and Leap, at least. It will put it on their account, but it doesn't give a lot of details. So it's limited in that way, at least the software.
And using Lending Key too, I mean, at this point, I would say one of the big pluses of it is their customer service is really, really wonderful. I've had to get in contact with them a couple of times, just sometimes whether there's, something we had to try to clarify with a setting or whatnot. And that really does help, because sometimes there's a couple of questions that come up with Lending Key in regards to our Library of Things collection that, it didn't initially make sense. So it definitely is interesting, though, kind of using, and we oftentimes have to explain to patrons too, that it's using another software than from our own regular checkout system. So there comes a little bit of understanding when working with it, that it definitely, it's a learning curve for sure. But it's been pretty helpful, I think, having that reservation system then. So
I see an interesting from Darby and Mary Fran and others on a permission slip for teens, which is an interesting model. But then I see also we've run into the problem that we are seeing, unfortunately, in libraries more of book banning, and how that could be related to parents then signing off on different things that their children are able to borrow. Boy, that is a tough one, and maybe a larger discussion than this particular thing. We do have book challenges in Ramsey, and we're working through them right now. So I'll let you know. But that is a very good point on both sides. Like, it would seem reasonable at first, like, hey, let's just do a permission slip like you would for anything else, and then your teen is ready to go. But then there's that other problem of, well, depends on the parents and the situation at home. It may not be a good solution. It may not be a good solution to then just require the parent to be there every time to have them check out something. So I don't have an answer on that one. It's a really good question. And I think there's some discussion of that, and I think we could probably discuss that quite a lot. That's a challenge, definitely. And I don't mean that as a book challenge. Did we get towards the end of the questions? Did we get through them?
If we did, that would be amazing, because we have 3 minutes left. So that would be like the most perfect timing ever.
Are there any, did we miss any questions? And I apologize, my voice is now, I'm at home with COVID with my whole family. So, my voice is probably going at this point. So sorry about that. Okay. Well, I don't know, Jeff, do you have any other final thoughts or if, oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. If we have 3 minutes, how long is our video?
Yeah, I can play that, certainly. It's a short kind of promotional video that we put together. We put it on our Facebook. That wraps back to, I guess, a couple of questions with how we promote it and whatnot. So let me play that then for you guys here. It certainly needs to be updated too. This was made, I guess, 2 years ago almost. So
it was made, but yeah. But you did such a good job with it, and it's all done in Canva with a little tweaks from other things too, I think, right, Jeff?
Yeah, there was a couple of other editing softwares and whatnot that I used with it. But it's, again, it might give you an idea if you do have a Library of Things collection, something that you could put together to kind of show then your community, which is really cool. So
we were thinking of doing as seen on TV parodies to try to promote our collection as well.
Yes, and it's something that, you know, we're kind of brewing with both TikTok ideas then too for the Library of Things. So this is one version of how you can do it. And it certainly, as I said, it needs to be updated, but let me play that for you guys here.
And it does have music and stuff in the background, but
yeah, I don't know if it's playing through, but
so a lot of that is our early STEM stuff, which is Sphero Robotics, still one of our most popular, and we have like 6 of them, and they're always out. All of those are popular. Cornhole, croquet, and ladder toss are probably the most popular backyard games.
And it's funny enough, as Matt said, you know, we don't even have, I don't think, ladder toss even in this video. So again, creating one of these things, it's always room for improvement to add in those other items, but and it's a lot of fun making them too, I have to just say. I worked with my colleague Gene, and we pretty much took like a day to just go around the library, figure out angles, then how to kind of get everything. It's a lot of fun to make it too.
The coin sorter is very popular now that I remember, actually. The pressure washer, sewing machine, and automotive diagnostic scanner all are like some of our top circulating items too, interestingly. And the movie projector, there's a lot of different ways you can do the movie kit. MAWA has a kit. There's a bunch of libraries. I would recommend looking at different libraries, the way they've done it. I think we would do some tweaks now if we were to creating it right now. But it's very popular. Loan a DVD player, get more circulations out of your DVD collection while it's dying slowly.
And we actually, it's funny enough too, it's, you know, the DVD player, and then right now I'm actually looking into getting a CD player, a cheap one, because we had a patron who was looking to use it, or looking if we had one. So again, it just wraps back to there's really some cool ways you can kind of combine then your collection. Be like, hey, you know, people always say I don't have a DVD player, so I can't check out DVDs, or I don't have a CD player, so I can't listen to the music you guys have. So using the Library of Things as a way to kind of prop up other collections is also a possibility too then. So thank you, everyone. I don't know if anyone has any like last minute questions then.
If not, then I will say thank you to Jeff, and especially to Matt. I mean, to Jeff too, but especially to Matt for doing this with COVID. We appreciate it for sure. Thank you. It seemed like there was a ton of questions, so we may have to revisit this topic, you know, in another few months or in a little while. But in the meantime, we do have another skill sharing conversation scheduled for September, which will be on developing a Spanish language print collection in your library. And for those who are interested in the book banning intellectual freedom topic, we also have a Mentor NJ meetup scheduled in September, where we will discuss fighting for intellectual freedom, and that will be moderated by Beth Kikowski from Cherry Hill Public Library, who just had a issue with their drag queen story time. So we'll kind of talk about how they responded to that, and we'll be able to chat and discuss and answer questions and share what we're all going through. So I encourage you to keep an eye on our calendar for all of those things. And in the meantime, you'll see an email from me soon with a follow-up, which includes the link to this video recording that we're doing, a survey that I hope you'll fill out so we can let Jeff and Matt know how they did, and anything else, you know, you can let us know anything else you might want to see. Thank you all so much for being here, and, you know, I hope to see you again soon at another Library Link event. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Darby.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jeff and Matt. That was great.
Thank you.